You think you're making choices. You're not. You're reacting. Reacting to cues, patterns, and emotional pressure you don't even notice, because that's how control works in the real world. It's not a villain twisting their mustache, shouting orders from a throne. It's your friend subtly guilting you into doing something. It's your boss framing extra work as a big opportunity. It's the ad that made you think buying that course was your own idea. Control isn't always loud. In fact, the most powerful control is silent. Let me tell you about Lucas. Smart guy, decent job, good heart. One day, his girlfriend starts crying during an argument. He backs off immediately. She learns something. Tears equal compliance. His boss tells him, "You're the only one I trust with this," and Lucas ends up working weekends. Again. He tells himself he's helping, that he's in control, but every time, he's being played, emotionally, socially, psychologically. If you enjoy videos like this, don't forget to like and subscribe button. That's not weakness. That's being human. Because most of what we call free will is actually conditioned behavior. You say yes because it's uncomfortable to say no. You apologize even when you're right. You post online hoping for likes, then feel anxious when they don't come. You think you're acting. But often you're just responding to invisible scripts others wrote for you. Here's the brutal truth. The world isn't divided between manipulators and victims. It's divided between people who understand human behavior and people who don't. If you don't see the strings, you're probably the puppet. And the scariest part, most of those strings, you tied yourself, ready to cut them. You're not as rational as you think. Neither am I, because the human brain isn't designed for truth. It's designed for survival. And survival means shortcuts. Every day, your mind uses tiny mental shortcuts to make sense of the world fast. These shortcuts, or cognitive triggers, are why you can be influenced without even realizing it. Not because you're weak, but because you're wired that way. Let's break down 5 of the most powerful ones. 1. Fear. Fear hijacks logic. A person who feels threatened will choose comfort over truth every single time. That's why marketers use urgency. That's why politicians use danger. Fear narrows your options until you take the path they've already chosen for you. 2. Social validation. If everyone's doing it, it must be right. Right? Wrong. But your brain is wired to follow the tribe because historically, the tribe meant survival. So you laugh at jokes you don't find funny. You agree with ideas you barely understand, just to belong. 3. Reciprocity. Someone gives you something, now you owe them, even if you didn't ask for it. It's why free samples work. It's why manipulators often help you first, not out of kindness, but to plant the hook. 4. Scarcity. Limited time, only 2 left. When something feels scarce, its value skyrockets. Your brain tells you, act now or regret it forever. And so, you do. 5. Authority. We obey people in lab coats, suits, uniforms, because authority triggers submission, even if they're wrong, even if we know they're wrong. The urge to defer is stronger than the urge to resist. Now, here's the twist. You don't need to be a master manipulator to use these triggers. You just need to understand them in yourself, because the moment you stop being aware is the moment someone else starts pulling the strings. It doesn't start with control. It starts with connection. That's why emotional manipulation is so dangerous, because it feels like love at first. It feels like someone finally understands you, listens to you, fights for you. But that's just the bait. The real trap is built in 3 stages: intensity, confusion, control. Let's take Anna's story. She met Diego at a low point, fresh out of a breakup, feeling invisible. He showered her with attention, compliments, deep talks at 2 a.m. "You're not like anyone I've ever met." She believed him. Why wouldn't she? He seemed sincere. That's intensity, emotional flood that bypasses logic. Then it shifted. Suddenly, he became cold, distant. When she asked what changed, he turned it on her. "You're too sensitive. You're imagining things." That's confusion, gaslighting, mixed signals, hot and cold behavior that erodes your sense of reality. And finally came the control. She started walking on eggshells, not because he told her what to do, but because she was afraid of losing that initial version of him, the good Diego who only showed up when she obeyed. This cycle doesn't just happen in relationships. It happens in workplaces, friendships, families. Anytime someone uses your emotions against you, you're in it. The praise then punish pattern. The guilt trip disguised as advice. The silence that punishes your independence. Here's the terrifying part. You might think you're choosing to stay, but what you're actually doing is negotiating for scraps of the connection you were once flooded with. Manipulators don't take power. They make you give it to them, piece by piece, by making you doubt your worth. And unless you break the cycle, you'll keep calling it love, when it's really just fear in a prettier mask. Control doesn't start when someone dominates you. It starts when you abandon yourself, just to be liked. Let that sink in. The people easiest to manipulate aren't the dumbest or the weakest. They're the neediest. Need for approval, need for love, need for validation, need for a yes from someone else, because they can't give it to themselves. You want to see how deep this goes? Watch how quickly someone folds under silence. Watch how far they go, just to avoid rejection, staying in dead-end relationships, laughing at jokes they hate, pretending to agree so they won't be alone. That's not kindness. That's a fear of being discarded. Manipulators smell this fear like blood in the water, and the second they sense it, the game begins. They won't need to scream. They won't even need to ask twice, because you'll give yourself up before they need to take anything. You'll justify their behavior. You'll chase their attention. You'll betray yourself just to be chosen, and they'll breadcrumb you. A compliment here, a silent treatment there, just enough to keep your self-worth on a leash. Because as long as you believe they have something you need, they own you. Here's the raw truth. The person who needs less controls more, not because they're cold, but because they're whole. If you can't be alone, you'll never be free. And if you need someone to make you feel enough, you'll keep shrinking until they finally leave, and take what's left of your dignity with them. Want to break the cycle? Start saying no when you're afraid to. Sit with the discomfort. Don't flinch. Every time you choose yourself over their approval, you take your power back. You want power? Learn how to care without needing. Learn how to feel without chasing. Because the moment you become emotionally predictable, you become emotionally owned. This is the law. What you can't walk away from owns you. And most people have no idea how owned they are. They answer every text immediately. They over-explain when someone pulls away. They beg for clarity when they're ghosted. And in doing all that, they hand over their power, wrapped in anxiety and tied with insecurity. Let's get real. The person who holds the emotional upper hand isn't always the one who loves less. It's the one who's willing to lose, because they're not afraid to. That's strategic indifference, not coldness, not arrogance, but discipline. The discipline to pause before reacting, to hold silence when someone expects a chase, to be okay with walking away, even when it hurts. Here's how the psychology works. People value what feels scarce. People respect what doesn't cling. People obsess over what they can't fully predict. So when you stop being emotionally available on demand, you stop being disposable, you create tension, presence, weight, and manipulators. They hate this because they can't hook you with guilt. They can't control you with withdrawal. They lose power the moment you stop dancing to their emotional playlist. This isn't about being heartless. It's about being so full inside that you're not desperate for anything outside. Because the moment you master your emotional reactions, you stop being the pawn. You start becoming the board. Now comes the real question. If you learn how to influence people, does that make you a manipulator? The answer is, it depends. Because power doesn't corrupt, it reveals. It exposes what was already there. And if you learn how the human mind works, the fears, the shortcuts, the invisible buttons, you now face a choice. Use it to exploit, or use it to protect, use it to get what you want, or use it to build what others need but are too afraid to ask for. But here's the kicker. You can't influence others ethically until you first master yourself. Because a person controlled by their own insecurities will always use power as a weapon, not a tool. So the path starts here. Learn how to influence your own mind. Start catching yourself before the self-sabotage kicks in. Notice when you're chasing validation instead of truth. Train your emotions like a muscle so you don't collapse every time someone withdraws attention. Self-mastery isn't sexy. It's quiet. It's choosing the hard conversation over passive aggression. It's walking away from the wrong thing before it becomes the only thing. It's making peace with being misunderstood because your values are louder than your ego. In the end, the goal isn't to control everyone. It's to become someone who can't be controlled, because once you see the game, you stop being a piece on the board. You become the player. And then you choose what kind of game to play. Just remember, no one can manipulate a person who doesn't need to be chosen, and no one controls the man or woman who's already claimed their own mind. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to click the like and subscribe button.